Okay, get cozy.
I want to be cozy. I'm hot.
Okay. Anyway, so back to our story. Once in the land where a white tower stood above a river, far to the west, there was another tower. It was tall, 200 feet tall, and shiny, shiny metal. It was not made of stone. And there was no way in or out. There were no windows, and there were no doors, and no towers on it. No little pointy parts or anything like that. It was just looked like one big tube standing up in the ground in the woods, but it was made of metal. It was right by a river. Well, one day a pirate ship was floating by, and two boys were on the pirate ship, and they were practicing playing their flute and juggling, and one of the boys was being really crazy, and he climbed way up onto the mast of the ship where the sails hang from, and he was being so not careful, and he got yelled at by his friends to come down. But when he was up there, he saw this shiny tower, and they wondered if there was treasure inside. Well, many weeks and months and later, maybe even years, I'm not sure, then one of the boys named Matt was in a castle far, far away, and he went down into the basement, and he found a doorway that was just standing there. It looked like a doorway, but it was kind of like a statue with twisty sides and top, and it was made of red stone, and you could see right through it. Well, somebody told him that if he goes through it, then he'll get some answers, because he had some questions about what he wanted to know about his life, and he heard that he had to go. His home was in trouble, and his family was in trouble, and his friends were in trouble back in their village, and he wasn't sure if he should go home. So he went through the doorway, and all of a sudden he appeared in a different place, and it was all steamy and warm and weird, and there was snake people inside, and the people look like snakes, but they look like humans too, but they kind of look like snakes. They had big eyes, and they had scaly skin, but they could talk. And one guy said, "What are you doing here?" And sorry, might be a scary story, but I'll try to make it not scary. And he said, "Burn me for a fool, you goat-kissing snake guy. Take me to where I can answer or ask my questions." And the snake guy was like, "You're being rude." But he took him anyway. And so they walked along a long hallway, twisting and turning. And he was looking out the windows, and he saw the same tree like 3 times. But he knew that he couldn't see the same tree because he went down this hallway and that hallway and this hallway. And he's like, that doesn't make sense. How can I see that same tree 3 times? So he was very confused. And then he got into the middle of the chamber, and there was poles up high with snaky people sitting on top. They were like the leaders. And they said, "What do you want to know?" And he said, "I want you to answer my questions, you goat-kissing milk sops and bloody sons of goats." And they didn't like being talked to like that because he was being very rude. But so they said, "Ask your questions." And he's like, "Should I go home?" And then they were like, "No, you can't go home, because if you go home, then you'll die." And he was like, "What? Why?" And they were tricking him into asking other questions, because that's not the questions he was going to ask. And they said, because if you don't, they said, if you need to go to Ridian, a city in the desert, and if you don't go there, then you'll die. And he's like, "Why?" And they said, because you'll sidestep your fate. And he's like, I don't understand what you're talking about. He was getting very frustrated. And he didn't know what to do. So he said, just tell me my fate. What's going to happen to me? And he was being very bossy. But all of a sudden, there was like an earthquake. And they were getting really scared. And they're like, you need to get out of our tower. And he's like, not before you tell me what I need to know. And they said, okay, fine. And they said, you need to go to Ruidian or you'll die. And then the other one said, you need to marry the daughter of the 9 moons. And he said, what? And then the other one said, you have to give up half the light of the world to save the world. And he was like, what? What are you talking about? And then they threw him out the door. And he was in a tower, but all of a sudden, he fell out of this doorway in the basement of the castle he was in the first place. And he was so confused. And he didn't know what to do. But he did remember that they told him to not go home. So he had to go to the desert, to a city, to find out some more answers. And so that's what he did. And he told his friend Perrin to go home and take care of everybody and make sure his sisters were safe. Because his friend Perrin was going to go home and protect his family and friends. And he knew that his friend could do it because his friend was strong and was a good guy. So he said, go check on my family, will ya? They said that I have to go to the desert. Perrin's like, okay, whatever. And then all of a sudden, 2 other people fell out of the doorway. And he's like, I didn't see any people in there. And they were like, well, maybe they threw us out because all 3 of us were in there. And the guy's like, I couldn't understand anything he said. They were speaking all different language. And Matt was like, what are you talking about? I understood him just fine. And then that's when they knew that Matt could speak a different language. And he didn't even know it. And that's the end of part 1. You're going to have to wait for part 2 to find out what happens when he goes to the desert.
No. You did one of them already.
Yeah, I did, but now you have to wait for the next episode.
Okay, but why wasn't he in there?
Wasn't Bella in there?
Yeah.
Oh, well, Bella was in the stable of the castle. I forgot. I was going to tell you how he got there, but then I remembered he went through a door and he didn't ride there. But in our 3rd episode about this tower, then Bella will be in that part. So, to be continued.
Oh, my story.
Okay, your story.